Squirm is one of those 1970s animal revenge stories, this time focusing on worms. Yeah, worms. How terrifying can a little worm be? Well, Squirm no doubt gained popularity from being on Mystery Science Theater 3000. That's how I first learned about it. Can Squirm be a good movie without the guys riffing it? Let's find out. To set the scene, we learn that a freak storm hit the small town of Fly Creek, where thousands of volts of electricity were sent into the muddy ground, changing the citizens' lives forever. We see this storm and how bad it really is, with shots of screaming worms for good measure. After that, the movie can begin. We meet Jerry and her family, her mom, Naomi, and her sister, Alma. Jerry's got a hot date with a guy she met, Mick, who's from the big city, only in town as an antiques dealer of all things. Anyway, she wants to pick him up, and she asks Roger to borrow his truck. Roger's her neighbor, and his family owns a worm farm. I think you can see where this is going. Next, we meet Mick, who's trying to get to town, but a fallen tree blocks the way. So he gets out and hoofs it through the woods.
Oh, by the way, you wouldn't know where there's a men's room around here, would you?
They head into town to pick up some supplies and other essentials, and Mick goes to get an egg cream at the diner, finding a worm inside of it.
Hey!
Which the owner thinks that he planted there to get a free drink. This gets him on the sheriff's bad side right away, not taking too kindly to city folks around here.
Then why'd you go and do a juvenile thing like that, fella?
The two lovebirds make it home, Mick meets the family, and then they head off to Mr. Beardsley's house. Not really sure who he is, but he's not home, and after looking around for a while, they see that he's not even alive. They call the cops, but when they go to show him the body, it's gone. Now, the sheriff really hates Mick and tells him it's time for City Boy to leave town. After that, they talk to Roger and decide to go fishing.
Okay. Great. And you can show me how to use a new reel I bought, huh? Let's go.
While they wait on him, they find that skeleton in Roger's shed.
A skeleton.
This is where they tried to make us think that Roger is the bad guy, like he's out killing people and taking skeletons. But it doesn't work because we know it's the worms. If the screaming worm in the intro doesn't give it away, the title sure does. While out on the boat, Mick's getting a worm ready, and it bites him. Roger says that he's seen this before. When he was a kid, his dad experimented with using electricity as a way to get worms up out of the ground. It worked, but it made them aggressive, and they bit off Roger's thumb.
Had to pretty near cut off all my thumb.
They get Mick back to shore so he can bandage himself up, leaving Jerry alone with Roger, who takes his opportunity to lay the moves on thick, which doesn't work out so well for him. Meanwhile, Mick's out looking for some answers. He goes back to the shed and takes the skull off the skeleton.
What are you doing? You creepy little wiener, what the hell?
Alma teams up with him and they break into the dentist's office to look for his dental records. Sure enough, the x-ray confirms it. This is Mr. Beardsley. Jerry comes running in to tell him about Roger and how he fell and the worms got him. And then he ran off into the woods screaming. They go out looking for him at the worm farm, and Mick finds more than he expected. Roger's dad filled with worms. After seeing that, they both book it out of there.
Can you squeal out under it?
They head over to Mr. Beardsley to try to see who or what killed him. Yeah, they still haven't figured out it's worms. Despite being bitten by one himself, Mick's pretty dumb. Well, it's here that they finally put two and two together. It is the worms. But they don't explain how Mr. Beardsley's skeleton was removed. That's when it dawns on Jerry. Roger must have done it. He was following them when they went to Mr. Beardsley's house. When the two went to call the cops, he took the skeleton to sell it at auction for $100. Apparently you can do that. During dinner, everything's real awkward until a massive tree falls down on their house. Mick has a look around at the roots, and sure enough, worms. But in an instant, they're gone, deterred by the sunlight. But it's about to get dark again real soon, and they just got a giant hole put into their house. So Mick runs off to get some plywood and board everything up. On his way back, he's stopped by Roger with worms all over his face.
You ain't got no good way to go, boy.
He attacks him, and soon enough, he's got Mick right where he wants him, and manages to knock him out and just leave him there for dead. Back home, Alma hears something upstairs, and when she opens the door, millions of worms fall out all around her. It's pretty gross. Meanwhile, Mick wakes up just as the worms are heading toward him. He lights his shirt on fire to use as a torch and makes it back to the house. In town, the locals are dealing with the worms in their own way. The sheriff is getting some hanky-panky in the jail cell. Did I just really say hanky-panky? Well, anyway, he's dead. And then everyone's gathered at the diner.
Cinematography by Seymour Butts.
After a while, they're all attacked too. Back at the house, Jerry's walking around and runs into Roger. That's not good. Mick and Roger fight. Mick gets away, only to see a living room chock full of worms. No way out here. The two guys fight on the steps, with Mick somehow overpowering the brute Roger and throwing him into the floor of worms, killing him. Mick saves Jerry. They both escape out the window. In the morning, the electric's restored, and Alma's found hiding in a trunk. So, a happy ending for all. Except, you know, the people who died. And that was Squirm. Let's go back to the question I asked earlier. Can Squirm stand out and be a good movie without the MST3K jokes? Well, the short answer, no. It's as B-movie as it gets. There are some standout performances, mostly from the worms, but I did like the makeup on Roger. When he has them all over his face, it looked pretty scary. Also, they did use some fake worms, but for the most part it's the real deal. With anyone's guess at how many appeared in the final film. They would order worms in batches of 250,000, and they ended up wiping out the New England fishing industry supply for that year. All for a stupid movie. All the typical tropes are there, the city boy who's out of his comfort zone, the locals that don't like him, and a small town cut off from the world. Squirm did the best with what they had, but a film about killer worms just isn't going to win any awards. Although, I guess it's not any worse than Slugs. I give Squirm 2 worm-faced Rogers out of 4.
Well, I don't know why, but okay.